My future in-laws demanded I pay off their mortgage as a traditional wedding custom. So I called everything off. I'm 29 male, had a promising relationship with my then fiancée, Lucy. We had met through mutual friends, and for over a year, our connection seemed genuine. I believed we were on a solid track towards sharing our lives. Around 6 months ago, I proposed, and she joyfully accepted. It was only when we started planning our wedding that things took an unexpected turn. Her parents, particularly her father, began interjecting themselves into every aspect of the event. The flowers, the guest list, the venue. If there was a decision to be made, they wanted the final say. But I mostly brushed off their strong opinions, figuring it was normal for future in-laws to have a vested interest in their only daughter's big day. I had no clue how deeply their entitlement ran. At first, it was small remarks from her hinting that I should contribute more to the wedding expenses. She'd say things like, "A real man shows generosity to his bride's family," or in many traditions, "The groom is responsible for special gifts." I wasn't entirely comfortable with these comments, but I thought maybe it was a cultural difference or just a benign request for me to show them I was serious about taking on responsibilities. So I tried to stay diplomatic. I offered to cover more than half of the wedding venue costs. I even offered to pay for a portion of the catering. Lucy seemed grateful, or so I assumed. But 2 weeks ago, her father dropped a bombshell that made every wedding expense look like pocket change. He wanted me to pay off his mortgage as a gesture of respect before the wedding. His exact words, if I recall, were, "In our family, it's customary that the man who marries into us demonstrates how he'll provide. So, if you truly respect me and my wife, you'll handle our mortgage." My jaw practically hit the floor. I thought I had misheard at first, but he repeated it, calm as ever, like it was the most natural request in the world. I tried to gather my wits and clarify. "You're asking me to cover the rest of your house payments?" I asked, half hoping I was misunderstanding. He nodded and said that it was a cultural tradition in their extended family, a sign of deep respect for the elders. I'd never heard Lucy mention any tradition like this. My father was taken aback when I mentioned it to him later. In fact, none of Lucy's prior statements had prepared me for anything so large-scale or financially reckless. Naturally, I pressed the issue with Lucy. "Is this something you knew about?" "Because I sure didn't," I said. She admitted that she was aware her parents might request something big, but she had hoped it would be more symbolic, like a generous wedding gift or a bigger reception. Even she was stunned that they demanded I pay off the entire mortgage. However, instead of telling her parents it was unreasonable, she tried convincing me that we could figure it out, maybe take out a personal loan or see if I could tap into my savings. I couldn't believe she was entertaining the idea. It wasn't just a financial impossibility. It felt like blatant exploitation. My discomfort grew when I realized her parents were not treating this as a request, but an expectation. Within days, her mother mentioned it again, calling it a small price to pay for joining their family. I wish I could say that was the final straw, but their entitled behavior only escalated, revealing more manipulative tactics than I ever thought possible. A few days after the initial mortgage demand, her parents started laying out their reasons why I should comply. Over dinner at their home, her father launched into a speech about family honor and how men in their circle always take responsibility for the family's well-being. He flaunted stories of relatives who allegedly bought lavish gifts for in-laws or financed entire businesses as part of wedding traditions. To me, it sounded like a brag fest designed to corner me into feeling inadequate if I refused. When I gently but firmly explained that I had my own financial obligations, bills, personal savings, and responsibilities to my own parents, her father waved it off as if it was trivial. "But we're talking about a bond between families," he said. "You're just paying off something that helps everyone, not just me." That comment was baffling. Paying off his mortgage wouldn't help everyone. It benefited only him and her mother. It certainly didn't help me or Lucy. We were already saving for a place of our own. Lucy's mother then pulled a twist. She hinted that I wouldn't be welcomed into family events with open arms if I showed disrespect by refusing their request. She leaned forward, giving me a disapproving look, and said, "You should understand that we don't want tension in the family. If you say no, it'll set a negative precedent for the future." It felt like blackmail. Do this, or you're out ultimatum. That evening, I confronted Lucy in private, hoping she would see reason. Instead, she seemed torn but still tried to mediate. "Let's calm down and see if we can work something out. Maybe you pay half now and half in a year." Her parents' mortgage was not a trivial amount. We were talking tens of thousands, if not more. They apparently still had a considerable balance. The suggestion that I sign up for such a massive financial responsibility purely to placate them bordered on insanity in my eyes. I asked her point blank how she could expect me to do this, and she said, "I just don't want to upset them." That response crushed me. She was more concerned about keeping her parents happy than about building a stable, equitable foundation for our marriage. A sense of betrayal kicked in. I tried to see it from her perspective. Looking back, I should have seen it coming from that very first dinner at Lucy's house. Her father had barely finished his greeting before launching into what felt like a financial audit. "So, what's your 5-year plan?" he asked, fork poised midair. "Have you started investing? Building a nest egg?" "Dad," Lucy whispered, shooting him an embarrassed look. But he pressed on. No, these are important questions. A responsible young man should have his finances in order." I remember shifting uncomfortably in my chair, watching Lucy's face flush red. Her mother jumped in then, but her contribution didn't help matters. "In our culture," she said, filling my plate with more food I didn't ask for, "how you treat family with gifts shows your level of respect." Lucy knows this very well. Later that night, as I drove home, Lucy tried to smooth things over. "They're just old-fashioned," she said, fiddling with the radio. "They want to make sure I'm taken care of." "Is that what that was?" I asked, because it felt more like an interrogation about my bank account. She laughed it off, but there was an edge to her voice. "You'll get used to it." I did. That's when it hit me, maybe that was part of the problem. Lucy had grown up thinking this level of financial scrutiny and obligation was normal. To her, family respect came with a price tag attached. The turning point arrived when her father requested a private meeting to sort out the details. We met at a cafe. I walked in, guarded and cautious. He was already sipping a drink, flipping through a folder. After we exchanged brief pleasantries, he laid out paperwork that itemized his mortgage balance, monthly interest, even a schedule of how soon it could be paid off if I made large lump sum payments. It was shocking how methodical he was. He acted like we were finalizing a business transaction. He even pointed out that once his mortgage was cleared, I might gain respect from the rest of his family and become something of a local hero. I felt physically ill at his boldness. "I'm not comfortable doing this," I said. "It's not my responsibility to pay off your mortgage." Without missing a beat, he called me disrespectful and questioned whether I truly cared for his daughter. That was the moment my internal alarm bell screamed. This wasn't just a weird tradition. It was an outright extortion attempt wrapped in family honor. And I wasn't about to cave in. After that tense meeting, rumors began circulating amongst some of her extended relatives, people I barely knew, claiming I was too cheap to take care of the family. Her mother must have been stirring the pot, painting me as a guy who was leaving them high and dry. I also started hearing from mutual friends that Lucy complained I was being stubborn. This stunned me the most, the fact that she never once stood up for me or told people how outrageous her parents' demand was. Instead, she let the blame fall squarely on me. Yet, the most shocking part came when her father threatened to derail our wedding. He left me a voicemail stating that if I didn't agree to the mortgage terms within the next few weeks, he'd instruct her mother to cancel wedding bookings. "Don't think we're bluffing," he said in a calm voice. "We have the deposit. We can shut this whole thing down." Essentially, they claimed all the major reservations were under their name and they'd effectively sabotage the ceremony if I didn't pay up. The sheer audacity of holding the wedding hostage was mind-boggling. I considered walking away right then, but I'd already invested time, money, and emotional energy into this engagement. I was also clinging to the hope that maybe Lucy would finally see how manipulative her parents were being. However, when I confronted her about the voicemail, she didn't condemn her father's actions. She asked if there was some compromise. Maybe you can loan them a partial amount and they promise to pay you back after a few years. The notion of handing her parents tens of thousands of dollars under the vague promise of repayment made me feel sick, and I was furious that she even entertained the idea. In a fit of frustration, I mentioned that their demands could be seen as a form of extortion. She became defensive, insisting that I was overreacting, that this was just how they do things. I countered, if this is how they do things, then I don't want any part of it. My father backed me up entirely when I told him the story. He thought it was ludicrous that someone could treat their future son-in-law like a walking ATM. He advised me to stand firm. A few days later, Lucy's father escalated further. He got hold of a phone number for one of my close friends, someone in a higher position at the distribution center, and tried to spread rumors that I was financially irresponsible. My friend immediately called me, appalled that this man was fishing for private information, hinting that if I couldn't even handle a family obligation, I might be a liability in the workplace. It was a disgusting tactic. That was the tipping point. I contacted a local attorney for advice. The attorney confirmed that if they continued to threaten or blackmail me, especially with false claims at my job, I might have grounds for legal action under harassment or defamation laws, depending on what they said. My father believed we should keep a record of everything, from text messages to voicemails. I realized I wasn't just dealing with pushy in-laws. I was dealing with people who were willing to sabotage my professional reputation to get their mortgage paid off. It was an astonishing level of entitlement. One evening, I decided enough was enough. I invited Lucy to my place for a talk. The moment she arrived, I laid it out. I can't marry into a family that threatens my livelihood and demands I pay off their mortgage. This is non-negotiable. I expected some pushback, maybe even an apology from her side. Instead, she tried to guilt-trip me. She said, "We've already told so many people about the wedding. How will it look if we cancel?" Her priority was appearances, not the health of our future. I pressed further. "You realize your parents could ruin my career with their stunts? They're actively contacting people I work with." She shrugged it off, suggesting that maybe I should just give in and avoid the hassle. That was the moment I knew my relationship was on the verge of collapse. She was basically telling me to sacrifice my financial security and sense of dignity just to maintain peace with her parents. Then came the final confrontation. Her father showed up unannounced at my doorstep. He claimed he had one last offer, which was essentially a payment plan for the mortgage, with a timeline spelled out. I shut the door in his face. He tried pounding on it, saying we're family. Let's talk like adults. But in my eyes, family doesn't extort each other. Right after that debacle, I called Lucy. "I'm done," I told her. "I can't be part of this wedding." The engagement was officially off. I still remember the silence on the line before she muttered, "You're making the biggest mistake of your life." Possibly. But I'd rather make that mistake than spend decades under her parents' thumb. In the following days, her parents resorted to further harassment. Multiple texts and voicemails demanded I reimburse them for the wedding deposits they'd made, money I never asked them to spend on my behalf. They threatened small claims court, claiming I'd wasted their money. My attorney advised me they'd have an uphill battle proving I was responsible for their expenses, as we had no written agreement stating I'd cover wedding costs. So I politely told them to take it up with their own pockets. The final blow came when they tried to smear me online. Her mother posted on social media, accusing me of being a deadbeat who led their daughter on and refused to follow tradition. But people who knew me personally saw through it. They understood I was being bullied into a massive payout. I collected screenshots of these defamatory posts just in case. My father believed we should sue for defamation, but for now, I'm content with letting them dig their own social hole. The sense of relief I felt after canceling the engagement was enormous. Sure, I lost a relationship I once valued, but I also dodged a lifetime of manipulative in-laws. In my mind, that was an acceptable trade-off. There's no telling how many more times they would have tried to wring cash out of me. From mortgage demands to potential future loans, It was clear I'd forever be a target of their extortionate behavior. In the end, I learned a harsh lesson about standing my ground, even when it means appending a major life plan. I'm still processing the fallout, but I'm confident I made the right choice. If someone views you only as a source of money rather than a partner or family member, that's a road to endless misery. Walking away might be painful in the short term, but it's 1,000 times better than living under the thumb of entitled parents-in-law. And that's exactly why I refused their mortgage demand and canceled the engagement on the spot with zero regrets. Thank you so much for listening to my story. If you have any thoughts, I'd love to hear them. So please leave a comment. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you want more stories like this one.